Hey everybody, this is Plan Your Greatness, and I am your gracious host, Carlton Hamilton. And let's get started today. Today we are continuing sharing a little bit about the book. This part is the introduction. Now we have already covered the title of the book, the mission and vision statement of the book. We've already talked about what kind of is the theme of the book, the three questions. We've talked about the three truths. Shout out to my man Lewis Hawes for inspiring me to put that into my book. We've talked about the dedication on how I was inspired to dedicate the book to my dad. And I think, what was the last thing? I think that was it. We talked about the dedication. Then we talked about the what was it? The preface, and that was just stating kind of like what's the book going to really be about. And so we've shared that. Now we're talking about the introduction, and the introduction is I'm telling you a little bit about me. You know, this is kind of the author's song, and I tell you a little bit about me. So I start from the very beginning. This is my journey on where I grew up, my influences by my mom and dad, the fact that I'm the seventh of 9 children. I'm the only lefty in the family. I don't go into details about that, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of the uniqueness of where I came from. Nobody would have ever expected me to get to the level of athletics, because I kind of showed it early, but I didn't. I mean, I was really going off the rails. And, my mom, got me started in the baseball, and that began that. But just telling you a little bit about, I was born in Gary, so I'm a Hoosier by birth, raised in Chicago Heights, Illinois, just a suburb just south of, the city. So it's very, in a lot of ways, it was very country, if you really want to think about it. When I went down south to visit where my dad was from and went through the Charleston, Mississippi town, I said, man, it looked a lot like Chicago Heights, just the way, very rural looking. So I could see why my dad settled in that area, because it was very similar. I've not been to where my mom is from. She's from Wynne, Arkansas. But my dad, I went down there and I just said, yeah, the way the streets looked and way that, what I remember as a kid, we had stepped up a little bit, but it was just a more lower middle class version of the South. And so, as I went through that, as I got through high school and I became this good athlete, and I went on to college, something happened, and that's what I wanted to share in this introduction. I wanted to tell this story. Now, I have never sat down and told anybody this story. For me sharing this story with you guys, it's because it's in the book. But I have never sat down and told this story because it's really emotional to me. And I hope I don't get emotional. It would make good content, but I hope I don't get emotional, because every time that I reread that section of the book and remember what I was going through in college, it gets me all choked up. But I'm going to read a little bit of that with you, because I have to read it to give you the context of what was happening at that time. Remember, now think about it. I was going off to college. I was actually, let me see if I can find that section. Yeah, hold on. Okay, oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going off to college. And so this is now going to be the first time that I'm actually really having some competition, and I go to Triton College, Triton College at that particular time was one of the top junior college programs in the country. The year prior, they had their leadoff hitter was Kirby Puckett. He's in the Hall of Fame. The number 2 hitter was Lance Johnson. That was the team before. And then later on down the line, they had David Boston, whose twin brother was the number 1 pick of the Chicago White Sox. That team was stacked. Larry Jackson, who got drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers, Bobby Paluski. I mean, the team was stacked. That was the year before. Then all of a sudden, Lance and David come back the next year, and then I get all these other teammates. And this is one of the most interesting things that I found out in the fall session. Okay, because I come to campus, I take all summer to make my decisions, so I don't get a lot of help from the coach. But when I get there to campus, what I heard from some of the other players who actually came and enrolled in class just to participate in the fall baseball camp or the tryouts, because they knew that there would be 50 scouts out there. And I'm not exaggerating. There's some days there may have been 50 to 75 scouts out there recruiting or seeing all the talent. So there were guys that knew that they were going to come to campus. They knew that they were going to get exposure, but they were going to get cut. And soon as they got cut, because about halfway through the fall semester, the first 8 weeks was when they would make cuts and say, hey, this is going to be the team that we can focus on the rest of the semester and then going on into the spring. So those guys knew that they were going to get exposure, but get cut. They would withdrew in enough time, go to another school, enroll, and be able to make their other team. And now they were on the radar for all the pro scouts. I thought that was brilliant. You know, I didn't know enough of the whole baseball system to think to do that. I just was coming there barely. I hadn't even turned 18 years old. I graduated when I was 17. I hadn't even turned 18 years old. So I don't know any of this stuff. So I see all that going on. But one of the things that was also going on in the background was because I signed so late in the summer, I didn't make a commitment to the school. All the housing and everything was all taken up. I didn't really get any assistance from the coach. I didn't have a car. So I ended up staying really, really far away from campus. And it took everything in my power to get up, get on the bus, get to class. And a lot of times I was late for class, or because I think this class was my first class on, I believe, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So a lot of times I was late for class, missing buses, missing assignments because we would have practice. I would have to get on the bus to get back to my place. I would get there late at night. I was tired, you know, so now I wasn't quite motivated to do my homework, and it was just an absolute mess. And this happened for the first 8 weeks of the fall session. Now, from my understanding, you know, we're on semesters, we're not on trimesters. So the semesters are a full 18 weeks. And so for the first 9 weeks of the semester, 18 weeks, yeah, about 18 weeks. 18 weeks of the semester. So for the first 9 weeks of the semester, about first 8 or 9 weeks of the semester, I'm failing. And I know I'm failing because I know I've not been turning in assignments. And when I did turn them in, they were half-assed done. And it's a mess. But now I'm starting to worry because I'm saying to myself, if I don't get on the ball, all that work that I did, all this, you know, talent that I have, I won't even be able to play in the spring. So I go into my college reading teacher's office and I said, hey, my name is Carlton Hamilton. I just want to see where I'm at in the class. And she just flat out told me, well, right now, you're failing the class. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I said, but what can I do to make sure that I pass this class? And she said, based on where you're at right now, you are so far behind that I believe it is impossible for you to pass this class. So when she said that, Now think about it. If a professor told you that, what's more than likely you're going to do? More than likely, the average student is going to withdraw because they don't want the failing grade. They'll take a W, which isn't good. You can go back and retake the class and erase that W. But if you go on through and get a failing grade, now it takes more, that the failing grade is really messed up. But she said that, you know what? There's no way you're going to pass this class. She said, but I'm not going to drop you. She said, you're more than welcome to finish out the class, but chances are slim and none. So now I would leave out this lady's office and I'm thinking to myself, man, what's going to happen? Am I going to fail the class and ruin my eligibility? But what I did was something that I've always had a chance, I've always been able to look back on. Is I said to myself, I said, you know what? I'm going to show up to every class. I'm going to do every assignment. I'm going to make this commitment to myself that I'm going to finish out this class. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to figure out how to get there. If I need to get there 2 hours early to get there on time, I'm going to get up. And so I made that commitment to myself for about the next 3-4 weeks of class. I'm getting up, I'm getting to campus on time. I mean, I'm way far away from the campus. It literally took me an hour on the bus to get there. I think I had to take 2 buses. So it took me an hour just to get there on campus. So if I missed the bus, I was done. So about 3 or 4 weeks down the road, something happens in my favor. One of the wrestlers on the wrestling team quit. I don't know if he decided to go to another school or he just decided to drop out the program. All of a sudden he was done. I get a notice. My coach says, hey, there's a room that's opened up closer to campus if you want it. So I talked to my parents. I said, hey, there's a room. It's going to cost, I don't know what it was. It was like $100 a month, $200 a month, something for the room. I think it was $100 a month. There was like 15 dudes in that house. So I think it was $100 a month or whatever it was. And so I get it. And so now that made it much easier. I was actually close to some of my teammates. If I needed to take the bus, it was just one bus and it just went straight down the road. It went right to the campus. I mean, now I'm cooking with grease. I'm getting the class on time. I'm enjoying it. But in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, man, this lady's going to fail me and I don't know what I'm going to do. So we go on through the semester, and I gotta pull this up because I'm gonna have to read this part. That I'm doing everything that I can. I'm turning in all the assignments. Now here's what's crazy. I remember turning in the assignments, but what I don't remember is her actually giving them back to me with a grade on them. I don't remember that. I'm not sure how much I participated in the class, but I get the sense that I don't think she ever called on me. I don't know if I actually raised my hand. I think I kind of blended into the background. But I turned all my work in. I did all the assignments. I did everything. I just don't remember her giving anything back to me. And I don't remember there being much dialogue with me the last 9 weeks of the class. Now, fast forward, this is the last day of the class. And this is a small college reading class. This isn't English 101. It is college reading because when I entered in the, remember that, I don't know if I mentioned this before, if you've been following me before, I graduated high school with a 1.51 grade point average. I mean, I struggled in everything but PE. It's maybe ceramics or anything like that. I struggled in every area of academics. So when I got to college and you have to take this entrance test to make sure that you're taking the classes that are not going to be too much of a challenge for you, I scored not high enough to get into the regular English 101 class. So I had to take college reading. So there's only maybe 12 to 15 people in the class, a small class. It was almost like tutoring. And so the teacher, this old, really nice Jewish lady, And I don't know her name off the top of my head. I need to go look in my transcripts because it has her name in it, but I know it was an old Jewish lady. And what she does is she goes down the list. I don't remember if she went in alphabetical order or she just went around the room talking to all the students. But what she did, which I think if every teacher has an opportunity to do this, I think they should all do this. And that is say something positive about that student in their participation in the class. And she did. She went through every student, said something nice about them. And the whole time I'm sitting there like this with my head down. I don't remember if I had a baseball cap on or if I just had my little 1980s afro. But I had my head down the whole time, just listening to her say the good things about everybody in the class. And, I'm listening to her and I'm saying, okay, I think she's called on everybody. And then she goes, now after she spoke to all the students, she said, there was this one particular student in the class that made such a dramatic turnaround. She said, at the halfway point of the class, this student was failing. I didn't think there was any way they could improve. Now, I still had my head down. I didn't know who she was talking about. And she continued on. From the halfway point on, this student was phenomenal. What he did, how much he improved, his academic growth, I was just so impressed by his effort. And there was this, I'm still got my head down because I'm thinking, man, this is a pretty phenomenal dude, She said, I wanted to acknowledge him in front of the class and congratulate Carlton Hamilton. My head slowly raised up. I couldn't believe that those beautiful words were from the lips of this wonderful motherly teacher. All I could think about was 8 or 9 weeks ago, I was failing the class. And there was no hope for me. I was running through my mind, what is going to happen, man? And am I going to be a disappointment to my mom and dad? And she closed by saying this, for your efforts, you'll receive a grade of B for the class. Now, I was jumping over every obstacle there was to get to class and to be on time with no guarantee that I was going to pass this class. And that whole moment, if you've ever watched the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, go and find that scene where Will Smith is playing Chris Garner. And Chris Garner is the last day and they're going to pick the intern. And so there's this sea of people in there. They're all making phone calls. And the guy comes and taps Chris on the shoulder and he says, Chris, come. And you could tell Chris is like, oh my God. Oh my God. He's fumbling around, trying to get his glasses and put his jacket on. And he sits down with the guy and they said, Will, sit down, Will, And Will just jokingly says, I wore a shirt today, If you got to see it at the beginning of the movie, as far as where he first came into the interview, he didn't have a shirt on. But he said, I wore a shirt today, being the last day and all, I wanted to look nice. And the guy said, well, wear one tomorrow, okay? Because tomorrow is going to be the first day if you want to work here. Would you like that, Chris? And Chris said, yes, I would. The guy asked him, he says, was it as easy as you thought? And Will said, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And they go, well, welcome. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And Will shakes his hand. He's crying. He's trying to, he's holding back the tears. He gets up and then he leaves out and he runs back to his desk. And this was what I felt like. Because Will tries to grab his stuff and he just takes off running out of the building. down the stairs into the sea of people in downtown San Francisco, and he just starts clapping like this, like yeah, and I remember as I was watching that movie, I said, man, I feel that, because when I left out of that classroom, I was like, yeah, man, and that. Usually when I tell that story, if I'm reading it and I'm reading it by myself, I start crying. Because what went through my head was, man, you could do anything. Man, if you wrap your mind around something and you focus, man, you can do anything. Because I mean, every obstacle, everything was, I just said, I'm going to get to school, I'm going to get to school, I'm going to get to school. And then look at what happens. And I've said this before, is that when you are laser focused on things and the universe starts working towards you. All of a sudden, I get a place close to the school. I'm living close to my teammates. I get a ride to school. Still, I don't know what's going to happen. But because it was just, as I look back on it, it was just like, brother, once you made that commitment that you were going to get to school and get to class with no guarantee, the universe said, like, man, I got to reward you for that. So the lady says the words. I walk out of the class. I said, I am going to be eligible. And the rest is history. I get to play that spring. I have a phenomenal spring. We end up going to the College World Series. I get noticed by all these professional scouts and all this other stuff. And there's so many stories and things that have came out. But if I had not made that point, I easily could have just walked away and just said, forget it. But I said, nope, something inside me said, keep going, keep trying, keep pushing, get up in the morning. And then I was rewarded by being closer to the campus. Then I was rewarded by passing that class. So think about it. Or I'm thinking about it as I fast forward and I'm telling this story. So now my life is going. But I have to share with you is the fact that it's just getting started. Because then now I'm playing professional baseball and I reached the pinnacle. I am the #1 prospect in the Chicago Cubs organization, and I'm one of the top left-handed pitchers in all of baseball. I had a phenomenal season. I actually led my team to the championship. We won the league championship. My teammate was Dave Martinez, who is now the manager of the Washington Nationals. And Damon Berryhill was on the team. Rich Amaral was on that team. Jamie Moyer was on that team. We had some studs on that team, but I ended up leading our team through the second half and becoming one of the top prospects. Barry Bonds was in the league at that time. There were some major league players in that league, and I was the top left-handed pitcher in that league. But again, I am ascending through the organization. Then all of a sudden, pop, I have this pop in my arm. And now everything spirals out of control. I lose that arm. You know, looking at the data that's out right now as far as guys throwing 100 miles an hour, I remember I got clocked at 96 miles an hour. Now, based on the guns now, I would probably be throwing at least another 2, maybe 3 miles an hour, and I may have touched 99, maybe even triple digits. But I would say easily I was hitting 96. I probably was hitting at least 97, 98 consistently, maybe 99. So I was right around what these guys are throwing now. If you imagine that, a left-handed pitcher, I think there's a pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, Alvarado. My delivery was very similar to his, that very high 3/4, and he throws dang near triple digits. So that's what it looked, and I look at that and I go, man, that's what my fastball looked like? I didn't know it. But what I'm getting at is this introduction that I'm explaining to you is then what happens after that point. I have the injury. I no longer have the advantage that I had being left-handed and throwing as hard as I became very average. That average turned into me really losing who I was. When I had that surgery, I remember asking the question, who am I? Because in my mind, I didn't have really an identity outside of being a professional baseball player. Remember, I mentioned this earlier, that as I'm wandering through life, all my failures are now starting to come up. The fact that I barely graduated from high school, the fact that I don't have a college degree now, I don't have a skill. Other than being a professional baseball player, I really didn't have a desire to coach in the game. The sport that I really liked was basketball. That actually, I had that taken away from me by my inability to stay eligible as a student. I got cut from the JV, the sophomore team, and the coach had legitimate reason. He said, your grades are terrible. I can't put you on the team, because his family, the coach, Coach Tandy, was in the administration. He ended up being, I think, a principal or assistant principal. His father was a principal. So imagine how serious they took academics, and it looked like to him that I didn't take academics seriously. So that cut my basketball career off, and I really wanted to play basketball. So now I'm floundering through no basketball career, no longer a baseball career, no really learned skills in high school. My high school offered welding and all kinds of good stuff. I didn't take advantage of any of that stuff. So now here I am, just kind of floundering around and trying to figure out, who I am. And in a sense, I'm just slowly dying. I'm just slowly dying a slow death. And as I look back on that, I know now that there's a lot of people in that same boat. You are just dying a very slow death because you're not looking out at what you can create. You're looking at maybe opportunities lost, and just maybe looking at what your skill set is at the moment, not realizing that at any point in time, you can improve those skills and change the trajectory of your life. But that's what I'm looking at, is I'm no longer an athlete. So I'm looking at what I lost as opposed to looking ahead of me and what I could gain. Now I'm slowly dying. I'm making all these bad decisions, and I'm fast forwarding now that now I'm involved in a felony, and I get charged with it. And now imagine that I'm facing 19 to 67 years in prison for this felony. And at the time, I'm just 31 years old. So think about that. And I remember doing the math in my head. I'm facing 19 to 67 years in prison. So that means if I served that whole time, the minimum of 19, I'm getting out at 50. And I'm looking at it, I'm going 50, your life's over. Even though from, once I reach 50 to where I'm at right now, I've done some phenomenal things. But as a 31-year-old, I'm looking 50, your life is done. And then I said, if I max this out and I served the 67 years, I'm thinking, okay, 31 and 67, that's 98. And in the state of Arizona, you only have to serve 85% of the time. So whatever that math is, 85% of 19, 85% of 67, still in my mind, your life is over. So as I'm looking at that time, I remember hearing those numbers from my lawyer. And I remember going back to my cell and literally collapsing on the ground because I go, my life is over. And I remember having this conversation with myself. And I said, God, I have done everything my way, and it has not worked. I'm paraphrasing. In the book, I give you more of a complete, because I can remember almost exactly what I said, but I'm just paraphrasing now. God, I've done everything my way, and it has not worked. But if you want me to do this time, I'll do it. Because I have earned it, and if this is what you believe I should be doing, I'll serve that time. But I said, God, listen up. I said, if you got any other plans for me, I said, I'm absolutely with that. Because as I said before, I've tried it my way, it has not worked. And after I said that, I felt a whole lot better. I didn't look around and just say things would change. But I just felt a whole lot better. And then a whole bunch of things started happening. My lawyer knew the prosecuting attorney. Everybody I knew started sending in letters. And all these things started happening. Going from 19 to 67 years, it was dropped down to 5 to 12. I ended up getting the 5, and then the judge took a year off, and I actually got 4 years. And because of the 85%, I served 85% of 4 years. Now, there's a whole whirlwind of stuff that happened that got me to that point. But what I did from that point is I looked around and I said, I gotta get through this process. I gotta create a process that is going to get me through all of this. Now, as I was going through prison, I remember reading some psychology books and realizing that I actually went through the 5 stages of grief, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. And at each one of those levels, I remember things that stuck out. When I went through denial, I was this isn't gonna happen. I'm better than this, and then I had to look around. I go, fool, you in here, you committed a crime. But that was the first level of denial. The second one was anger. And that's a crazy level, because I remember thinking specifically about how I kept wishing I was a better criminal. And I see, if you go through that and if you're not in your right mind, you're just going to look over how you could have done the crime better. And if you get the opportunity to do something like that again, you're going to correct it. Absolutely delusional. Number 3 is I went through depression. And that was tough. And what I've realized looking back on that is the things that were really heavy on my mind were the squandered, wasted opportunities I felt. Wasting my talent, squandering every opportunity, being this great athlete, not listening to coaches. I mean, it was everything. It was so painful. And what I've learned is that I believe that is the stage that most people get into. It lasts a long time, or they never get out of it because it's so painful. Then there was acceptance. And I remember a moment where the acceptance part was clicking in. And I was on the telephone with my mom. And she was so optimistic about everything. And I had to go, Mom, I'm going to prison. And I remember that there was a pause. And she said, oh, don't say that. And I said, you know what? Don't ever say that again. Always be very positive from this point forward, because my mom wasn't dealing with this. And if I tried to force her to deal with it, that could be super duper painful. And a lot of times that's how we have to deal with people, is that they're going through something. You don't necessarily want to try to shock them, but you do want to poke at them and say, hey, here's some opportunities to make some change. I'm not going to try to shock you, because some people just aren't ready for that transformation. And so that was super duper powerful. As I'm telling this, as I'm just telling you, how I'm living with that. And so one of the things that I had to come to grips with, and this is I'm turning the page, this is at the very last page of this part, the introduction. Now, I have this quote on my refrigerator. And I have it there, and a lot of times I'll go to the refrigerator and get some water out of the filter, and I look at it, and I don't really say anything or acknowledge it's even there. But it's there in my subconscious. And that's why I have it there, to just, as I look at it, it's gonna go right into my subconscious mind, and it's going to remind me the transformation that I made as far as everything that I did to get to the point that I am right now. One of them was this very quote that I created. Now, I want you to listen closely to what it says. There's something very important at the beginning, very important at the end. Listen closely to what I'm saying. I said, I forgive all who I perceive have wronged me. However, I will not ask for an apology. That would be admitting that they took something from me, which they did not. In fact, I will humbly thank them for creating a situation in which I have grown immeasurably from. Be inspired by both a positive opportunity and or the opportunity activated from a negative situation. Either way, find our inspiration before it finds us. Now, I wrote that. I don't even know what really inspired me to write that. I didn't write that in prison. I wrote that as I was writing this book. That I understood, and I mentioned this about my father, I understood that my father didn't take anything from me. All he did was created an opportunity that I could actually grow from. That's how I've actually learned how to look at people that over time we blame others. We say that person did this to me, that person did that to me. Okay, so if you're saying that, you're saying they took something from you, they're withholding something from you, or they are the cause to where you are right now, which means you're taking no responsibility for where you're at right now. And that's why I said, I don't want an apology, because if I ask for apology, I'm acknowledging that I believe you took something from me, you're withholding something from me, you've denied me something. And that's why I said the renewing of my mind is that you didn't take anything from me, you actually gave me something. You created an opportunity, and look at what I've done with it. Because I've said this before to other people. I go, if your dad wasn't around and your mom did this and all these other people that you felt wronged you in your life, and now you're sitting on the curb, leaning up against some building with a bottle of some, I'm exaggerating the situation. You're homeless, you're broke, you're strung out on drugs, you're drinking. And anybody asks you how you get there, it was them, it was this, it was that. He didn't do this, he didn't do that. And they're now looking at you and they're saying to themselves, you are an absolute hot mess. What am I going to do with you? What story is that telling? And so at some point in time when I was locked up, I said, you know what? I don't want to tell that story. What I want the story to be told is, in spite of all of that, you were able to do this. That's the story people want to hear. That's the story people go to the movie theaters to watch. They don't want to watch somebody sitting over there wallowing on, and how their life just fell apart. Absolutely don't nobody want to see that. And so, as I was able to give you an idea of my journey, the introduction, this is who this story is about. When you get through that point in the introduction, you're going to look at it and go, yeah, this person didn't pout. This person looked at his life and said, I need to make some changes. And I made those changes. And because I've made those changes, I'm absolutely here firsthand to tell you how to plan your greatness. All right? Thank you all for joining me today. And I'm going to leave you with what I leave you with every single time. And that is telling you, plan your greatness. You know why? Because nobody else will. I will see you guys all next time.